Hey folks, Steve here with a post Game On Con video. Um, Doing this the day after the convention has ended, just to do a little bit of a retrospective wrap up on everything to kind of close out the commentary I provided during the convention and to touch on a couple of things that I really didn't have time to hit Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. Now Friday, I ended up, I wasn't really at the convention very much. I had to do some stuff otherwise. While my wife got to game, which was really great, and then Sunday was kind of Saturday was a similar deal to Friday. For the most part, Sunday I got to do some family gaming before returning home to watch the Super Bowl. So it's an eventful week and worthwhile to decompress. I'm already hit, the Monday after coming home and, going back to work and doing all the normal things. It's such a down feeling. It's like the post convention drop um, that I get. I'm not sure everyone gets this, but that feeling of just, wow, it was so great to just be gaming, 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 my favorite thing, and getting to be around really great people, my friends, some friends that I only see once a year, basically, and just getting to have fun and relax and play some games and maybe not relax, but play some games, um, is such an awesome thing to be able to just go do. And then when that time of year ends, and for me, it is usually just a once a year convention trip. Um, it's a real downer to get back to life as usual just because it's like and maybe the only saving bit there is an intention or a commitment to try to get back to gaming with friends more often. And if you watch this channel, you know that, well, a lot of the gaming that I cover on the channel is solitaire, and it may always be solitaire because it's super duper awkward to bust out a camera and start talking to an audience when you have friends in the room. It's very strange. Um, that I should try to play more games with friends more often, even if that means trying to get people together more, just put the extra effort in. I do get to play games, once or twice a month, and I've got other hobby things that I do. But just even playing board games with my wife would be really good, and try to just maybe use Vassal more for online gaming to play some games that I haven't gotten to play in a long time. I really should try to do that. I think it would be a good idea for my sanity, for myself, for fun. I should aim to do that. It occurred to me, a friend pointed out that like, hey, you don't seem to play, the convention standard multiplayer CDGs anymore. And I said, yeah, that's true. I've probably not played Here I Stand in like 5 years. And it's like, wow, 5 years. And the reason is, now that, I got a kiddo that's old enough to kind of be like, you need to steward that child while one parent is gaming, sort of thing, that I tend to pick my days of the convention to be the early days of the convention, weekdays, and I do the big hex encounter monster games usually, or some version of that, which is what I did this time, right? And then let the weekend days really go to my wife to play games. And she plays the multiplayer CDGs and does, quite well there. And so kind of fallen into that rhythm. And it's like, well, what would I do to change it? And I'm not sure that needs changing, but I definitely need to think further ahead on what games do I want to play. And maybe I mix in a game that's different or get into a group game. Um, and we'll get into kind of like what might bring that on for next year as I'm talking here. But I went to the convention this year with a goal in mind, and my goal was to play some systems that I felt like I haven't really gotten to play as much of, and to actually play it opposed. And I've done that a couple other times. Like, I've done BCS opposed at conventions. I got to play OCS a little bit in the past, and that was a lot of fun opposed. And so I really wanted to play some great campaigns of the American Civil War and Library of Napoleonic Battles opposed, even if I was teaching the Napoleonic stuff. And I succeeded in that goal pretty well. And looking back, it's probably the highlight, or like what was the most ultimately satisfying to play, just the moment to moment enjoyment really was playing Grant Takes Command. I mean, it was just so good to get to play that game, period, right? And to play it opposed with somebody who also knew the rules, so we could just, we weren't teaching each other, we could just play and see what happened. And it was an exciting game, it was a close game. um, it had its own interesting puzzle for being a 4 turn basic scenario. It was still really interesting and really, like, really had to think, what am I going to do here? um, Maybe not the same as playing a big campaign scenario, but it was really cool to just get to play that. So there's always an opportunity to say, what was the highlight? I think, maybe you don't have a highlight at the convention, like everything is good or everything was okay. I think this was the highlight. And just appreciating the initiative system, where you have to kind of be engaged the whole time, is really good. And I could see where sometimes at conventions it's okay if somebody's like, I got to take my move and it's going to take a while, and you can get up, you can walk around, you can check the game swap table. But being highly engaged playing GCACW was really great. And my esteem for the system grows as I play it. And it's definitely heading towards, one of my top systems. But I do feel like I need to play it more. I did find that I became a bit obsessive about the system in like the immediate aftermath of playing it, where like I just wanted to read the game specific rules for different scenarios and see how things shape up and how it's represented. And I want to play that game, I want to play that scenario, which is really good. It's just having a lot on the mind. And this lines up with kind of my pre-convention project of getting all of my Roads to Gettysburg counters punched and clipped, which I have some stuff punched and clipped from playing smaller scenarios in the past with Roads to Gettysburg too. But I really need to finish the game being punched so I can play whatever I want whenever I want. So I need to I'm going to be trying to work on that. But at the same token, what I also really liked and wanted to play was Library of Napoleonic Battles. I taught my buddy Scott, and that turned out really good. And what I found in retrospect, as I was looking back at the week, is that Library of Napoleonic Battles is actually a really great next day game if you're gonna like spend all day playing great campaigns. And I had some nemesis in between there, but the next day, and this just happens to be the game that we played, but this OSG game, Napoleon Invades Spain. Well, any Library of Napoleonic Battle game is a great follow up because it is ultimately lighter than GCACW. It has its own intricacies, to be sure, but as it happens, it plays really quick, and you have a little bit of that downtime where your opponent's kind of moving and figuring out what they want to do. But at least for some of these battles, there were so few counters. Like the scenario that we played at Espinosa. It's like a little bit of a break. You see what they're trying to do, and then you get to play your turn. And the fact that Kevin Zucker has kind of said, hey, a lot of the detail that people look for is underneath the hood, of the game. It's in that closed watch case. And the game basically is designing for effect, basically, where like things are happening, they're at a scale that you don't see all the bits and details, but the net effect is the same. Is a strength in terms of just getting a game out and playing it. And like, it didn't take long to set up. We got right to playing. Teaching it was pretty straightforward. There were still some things we didn't totally get into, but like we could play it. It was enjoyable. We ended early. Kind of a nice palate cleanser. And we probably could have fit in an even smaller scenario like La Coruña that day, but I figured that was enough. And that was good. And ultimately, I look at it and say, well, I think he and I agreed, like, if you're going to play the game, you maybe don't use hidden movement for a while. You try to teach it and get you to understand the system, and you add in the cards maybe, and then you do hidden movement. And I think I mentioned this in the actual day of video, but like the cards do add quite a lot, and it does add a lot of spice into a game that could maybe be seen as a bit more bland without them. Um, and the nice thing is, like, it's not as though the cards are overpowered necessarily, but they do provide that opportunity to have unexpected things come up. Sometimes, not always. Sometimes you just might be cycling through cards until you get a good one that can really help your game position. But that felt all really good. I think the move to a universal deck where each game kind of tells you which cards to remove, and then for the Fog of War cards that can have variable meaning based on the game that you bought, like, that is a really clean way to deal with that system. So I think that was really smart of OSG, Kevin Zucker, to do, and it worked out, pretty nice in here. We did see some guerrilla type effects go on, and some other interesting tactical changes that really, affected the game state. So that was kind of neat to see altogether. And ultimately, we talked plenty about Spanish-American War, and I think, it's only been a day. Who knows what's going to happen when, or a couple of days, with the errata coming out, if that's really going to change the outlook on this game. The rules almost, I feel like, could benefit from a total rewrite, which is a bummer. It's a bummer to see that. Whenever you see a rule book for a game showing like rewrite on Board Game Geek, like, that's not a great indicator if the rules had to be rewritten to be useful. I just see this game and think it just needs to be tightened up, and the best way to tighten it up is to maybe restate the language of the rules in a more cohesive way. I think that's going to kind of be where I land on it. But there were I should show this. Hold on. So I got this from the GameSwap table. So this is from New England. Is it New England Simulations? New England Simulations, Winter's Victory, I believe based on the Wellington's Victory system originally, but it has a lot of changes. In a series that looks like is going to be dubbed Grand Battles of the First Empire. This is the Battle of, Eylau, Prussian Eylau, 7th to 8th of February, 1807. So great big, French versus Russians battle. And this was at the GameSwap table for like a just wild low price. And it worked out that I had some games that I had taken to sell for really cheap. And basically those games sold. They're really older versions of games I bought new editions of over the years. And sold those for like $10 a pop, and sold a few of those and had some money to get this, again, for a price that is just wild. And this is a deluxe edition, like numbered copy. There's a lot in here, guys. Like, I'm not going to do a whole unboxing video of this thing, but it is unpunched. It's in like pristine, perfect condition, and is going to be a really big, like, detailed Napoleonic battle game, and it's certainly worth a look at some point. And I'll say it's not as though this like replaces or invalidates the Coming Storm or any other of the library of Napoleonic games, because ultimately I think the library system, OSG's game series, is really good for being a little more zoomed out. It's not going to take you forever. I mean, some of the bigger battles will take a while, but not forever. and you're basically able to knock out a lot of different maneuvers and activities, and ultimately this is going to be much more zoomed in. The whole battle takes up like 4 different maps, and the map looks really cool, but you can see it's like a white snow plane here. So totally different complexity level and detail level, and there's a lot of goodies in here. And so, that thought of like, well, if I really do need to see all the bloody losses of each unit, as there's fighting and each detailed account of every little thing, well, this is the system I would expect to see that out of. Now, I know there's the Lava Tai series, and I don't really have that, if only because it's a system or a series that seems just impossible to invest in because it's all out of print or it terribly, terribly expensive. So it really just feels like a roulette wheel on like, oh, you could get the latest Lava Tai game, but what if it's a battle that I don't like? What if I don't want that battle? I want this battle. Okay, well, that game's out of print for 10 years and you can buy it for $600. Like, no, that's not very helpful. So I'm happy to at least pick something up while, the price was right. It's not the Lava Tai series, but it is something in the same vein, or at least similar enough. And it looks really cool, and the components just look really, really nice. So this was a cool pickup. Don't know how soon we'll get coverage on the channel, but I'm really glad I picked this up when I did. So it's something to look forward to. The other thing that really came out of sort of the convention conversations after I was actively gaming were the tables playing Imperial Elegy, which is a multiplayer CDG in the same vein as Here I Stand and Virgin Queen, but instead covering from 1850 to 1920, so the lead up and including World War One. This is a game published by VUCA Simulations, and there were a couple different tables playing it, and most of the responses I got from people playing while they were playing it was like a lot of like faces in contemplation, saying, it's interesting, we're still figuring it out. And you kind of have to expect that. Like, for those who are in the know, who play a lot of multiplayer CDGs in convention context, like, Here I Stand is the gold standard. It's better probably than most others. You have to be looking for something specific if you're going to play something else like Napoleonic Wars or Virgin Queen. But Here I Stand's like that's the standard best played, most played one. I'll say most played, maybe not best played, just most played one due to its popularity and tightness. But it'd be like, imagine if Here I Stand came out today and you just sat down at a convention table to play it. There'd be a lot of friction, right? Trying to figure out, how do you even play the Protestants? How do you do religious conversions? How does that even work? Why is the Pope doing this? All of that would apply, and I think it's that same feeling, or like that same sort of like encountering a new entity is happening with Imperial Elegy, where folks need to figure out like, what are all the levers and the pulleys and what does effective play look like. So I think for folks that are like, oh, I'm a Here I Stand shark, well, you're not going to be a shark of Imperial Elegy. So it's interesting to see folks just like they're still figuring it all out. And in the meantime, I had listened to a podcast episode that featured the designer talking about the game. And that podcast episode itself kind of sold me on the game. And so I've purchased a copy. It's going to be a first edition, first printing copy. It's still available in the US, which means there's some errata, to be sure, guys. I already looked it up. There's plenty of errata that I'll have to look at, and maybe that's to be expected for such a big game and nuanced game, and I'm okay with that. But it really seems like, and I don't have the game here to show on camera, but when it arrives, we'll probably look at it. It feels like it's gonna be a really great game for me. I really feel like, having heard the designer talk about the game, he and I would be fast friends if we ever met in person, which is funny. Just hearing him talk about certain subjects, and he thinks about them similar to the way that I've thought about them, it seems like. And I do really find the late 1800s to be a really fascinating time period, both including the American Civil War, but just at scale and broadly leading up to World War One. And of course, I'm a World War One kind of guy. I really think World War One's interesting for many reasons. And so like Imperial Elegy just feels like it's the game for me. Like it's calling my name, and I need to lean into that. Even if it's going to take a while for the convention circuit to really like embrace it and understand it. But there's a lot of cool mechanics. I'm not going to cover all of that here, but there are a lot of cool mechanics that I really want to engage in and try it out and see how it plays. The fact that it has bot support, so you can play it with 6 or less people, is really, really attractive, because you really can't do that with Here I Stand. You really can't do that. You can do it a little more in Virgin Queen, but it's still very difficult. So the thought process to say, well, I could even play Imperial Elegy Solitaire if I wanted to, and play against 5 bots. I can't imagine that's the best way to play, but it is an excuse me, it is an option. That's really fascinating. So I really want to, the con gave me enough exposure to that game that I really want to get that, try it out. I kind of like the subject matter more than Here I Stand subject matter, but hey, Here I Stand's a great, amazing game. I think Imperial Elegy will potentially also be an amazing game. Deal with some errata, deal with the fact that it's a new game. Not everybody's figured out the balance effects that you need to keep in mind. And when I say that, what I mean is, like, you could sit down at a Here I Stand game filled with people who've played before, and that's a very different game than if you sat down and played Here I Stand with half the table being newbies who are learning. Now, that's not to mean you don't let newbies play. You should let newbies play. But Here I Stand is a game that has like a balance effect. Like, oh, if the newbie is the Ottomans and they're not really doing the thing that they need to do properly, well, that's going to empower the expert Habsburg player who's going to be more effective, and the table has to account for that, or they need to figure out that that's happening. And all that kind of stuff happens. So, like, Here I Stand's pretty balanced in terms of like how the factions all interact together, and players who know the game will know that, and they will play accordingly. With Imperial Elegy, not enough time has passed for players to get familiar with how things need to shift and move. So, for instance, Prussia is in the game and can become Germany, right? German unification. One of the powers that can really slow that down or halt it is, in fact, Austria. But they don't have to do it, and if they don't, like, that's a different trajectory for the game than if they did try to stop German unification, or to what degree they try to stop it. And so all those kind of things, the politics of the time, the strategies of the different nations at the time are going to factor into that game. And then the player knowledge to understand the game state and go, ooh, look at Britain over there doing this thing. Are we going to do anything about that? We really need to coordinate a response to that. The players have to learn that after a couple of different plays. So, it's hard to say like, oh, Imperial Elegy came out, it's going to be great. It could be, yeah, sure. It could be like Tanto Monta, which I feel like hasn't gone over as well. Like, it came out, it's pretty complex for what it is. And it didn't really, I'm not sure it has the staying power of Here I Stand or Virgin Queen. But even Virgin Queen had to go through its paces to really earn its spot as the alternative to Here I Stand for those who want a little more oddball complexity of added on chrome and mechanics, right? That's kind of why you play Virgin Queen over Here I Stand, as it has just more chrome and more tables, and sometimes you like that, and it's a nice change of pace from Here I Stand. I think Imperial Elegy is going to be like that. We'll see, but it has to have a little time with the community. So, any review that you would see even right now, I suspect, is going to be, a review based on even a single play, or someone's going to say, hey, I played it at a convention and I thought it was okay, or maybe I didn't like it. But, that would apply to the first time somebody played Here I Stand. It takes some time for these games to gel. And so I do hope folks are going to give Imperial Elegy that opportunity. I certainly want to. It still could turn out that maybe Imperial Elegy is not, not a contender, but to me, it just feels like there's enough of the right bits in that game to make it really interesting. I'm a fan of Victoria 2 and Victoria 3 PC games, and so maybe that's going to color my opinion of Imperial Elegy because it fits in that time frame, and you have a lot of the same like historical narratives playing out that I find really fascinating. So maybe I'm just going to be biased in favor of Imperial Elegy, but it's going to be worth a try. So I'm waiting for my copy to show up, and lots of good fun stuff there, guys. So this is the drop, guys. It truly is a great convention, a great time. I should also point out my wife did very well. She was playing Game of Thrones, the board game, and she was winning as House Baratheon until, or maybe she was tied for winning or was winning, before she had to drop out to start playing the multiplayer Dune game, the old classic Dune, which she won that game as the Fremen. So she was winning before she had to leave Game of Thrones. Then she won her game playing Dune as the Fremen, and then she played the annual Here I Stand table that meets every year to play Here I Stand at this convention, like the same group of 6 people play every year, and she won that game as the Habsburgs. Um, and then other game playing, but those were like some highlights where she got into these multiplayer games and came out on top. So she did the family proud, good stuff. It was a really good convention all around. Just a good time with friends. If you've never been to a convention, I truly, truly, truly recommend that you give it a shot and give it some time to learn your community. We have a really great community. It's kind of a smaller convention. It stays that way. The same people show up every year. So you do develop that sense of community. Game On's been going on for like 14 years, 15 years. And I've been to like 10 of them or 11 or 12 of them, or like most of them at this point. So I feel pretty embedded in the community. If you've never been to a convention and you're starting, hey, don't expect it to feel like a family, but you go there often enough, you go there long enough, and it becomes a part of your hobby experience, and it's worthwhile if you have a good community. I guess that's the thing. I can't say that all communities are good communities, but it's worth a shot to find a good community. But yeah, man, the drop. So we're back to regular as is life and gaming in the solitaire mode in the garage here, and we'll do that for a while. So probably in a little while, I got to do some stuff over the next couple of weeks. I'll be working away at getting some counter sheets punched and clipped and organized for GCACW. I've got a couple different games I need to finish doing that for. But we'll be getting into the Third World War from Compass pretty soon. Pretty soon. Give me a little time, guys. And we'll see what else happens. So thanks for watching this one. Again, just thoughts, post-mortem, a look back at what was going on at the convention after I've had a good night's sleep. So, yeah, there you go. If you have any thoughts on these games I've talked about here, Winner's Victory, Spanish-American War, if you've managed to play the new version that just came out, GCACW, Library of Napoleonic Battles, all the above, any of the above, leave a comment and we'll have a conversation. Looking forward to future convention opportunities. Yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Take care. Keep gaming. We'll see you in the next one.